Hi, welcome to Understanding Conscious Cryptids with me, Khat Hansen, your host. Hi everyone, welcome to Understanding Conscious Cryptids. It's me, Khat. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Today's lesson is going to be on giants. I've had a couple requests for these, and I think I'm going to do this like in two sections because I kind of want to lead into understanding where giants play a role in our history here in the United States and abroad, because they trace their lineage all through human history, and that's because they were here before us. Okay, so get ready. This is going to be a wild one, I think. Anyway, like I said, today's lesson is going to be about the giants, and here in North America, a lot of the Native American tribes have history dealing with them, direct history. And in dealing with them, we find that some of them have very human-like attributes, while others of them do not. The ones that I know about were the big white-haired, white type of giants, and we called them Nahullo. And it kind of is an interchangeable term because it got bastardized a little bit in that we use Nahullo to describe people, the giant people who had light skin and white hair. And then when Caucasian people came to the North American continent and met up with the Native American tribes, we just associated Nahullo with them because they were white-skinned. It's kind of the way that our language works. One word can mean many. So that's how that came about with that. So I'm trying to keep it a little bit separate here. The Nahullo that we're going to be talking about are the giants, okay? And these guys were cannibals. They are just the most heinous type of giant. They stole women, they stole children, they would eat the elderly. They didn't care, who they took and why they took them. Some took them to try and breed with the women, but mostly the women were taken for twofold. They were taken as food and they were taken as slaves. Now, these guys, not very many people talk about them. They kind of just wanted to go away. But in reality, the Nahullo were very large, over 10 feet tall. That's a pretty big individual. Okay, so we're talking 10 feet to 15 feet on average for these guys. And it was nothing for them to run across the plain, and run a buffalo down and eat it. Wolf packs, they were said to attack them and to literally eat them just like you would pop M&Ms into your mouth. Okay, so these guys were big, and they were here on this North American continent before the Native American tribes got here. Okay, so the Native American legends that talk about them say that they were here, but that they went away for a while, and then they came back. So apparently they went either north, or if you track it, they went south. And in my archaeological studies, I was able to show good records for the fact that they went north. And while they were north, the Inuit people had to deal with them. Up through Canada, through the Canadian Rockies and things, up that way. They had to deal with them, just like the Chata people and the Chickasaw, there are so many down here on the North American continents that they dealt with them. The Native American tribes were really good at dealing with people, but if they had to band together to do something, they would. It wasn't their first choice to do something about them that way, but they had to. And when they showed up here, they weren't like us. They didn't seem to have the morals that we have. They went semi-nude, naked. They ate their food raw. They did not care to have fire. Although they did have the ability to make fire, they just preferred their food to be raw. And that leads us into a whole other area of discussion, that I am not real keen to get into, because I'm not going to do it here in lessons, because it's got to do with religion, and world history. But these guys were just horrific. They had big areas that they lived in. I don't know what to call them. I want to call them a fort, but there again, that's going to lead people to think like a cowboy sort of thing, Western fort. And it's not that. We call them fortifications because they build walls, or they build them out of stone, and these things were up on the mountains, on the tops of the mountains, and they had a lot of giants that lived up there. Okay, I'm talking thousands. So where did all those bodies go? Seriously, think about that for a minute. If the Native Americans had a history of these Nahullo, these white beings, being here on the North American continent, eating people, they were very cannibalistic, very warlike, very antagonistic. Where did those bodies go? That's a real head scratcher if you don't know anything about it, whereas when you study archaeology, you understand that through history you can kind of trace back a little bit what happened. And there were bones found. There were recordings of people finding them. I'm not talking one or two. I'm talking hundreds of these bones were found from these people. And they lived here on the North American continent. They fought with the other Native American tribes that eventually came into the North American continent. Okay, so these beings were here first, approximately 10 to 12,000 years ago. Okay, and then you have the Native American tribes showing up here on the North American continent a few years later. But by then, the giant race had already been established, and for whatever reason, there were only a few of them left here, and then they left for a little bit. And the record tellings of them leaving, it's not very specific. It doesn't say they went away for 35 years or 45 years. It just says a period of time. And then they came back, And when they came back with a vengeance. They were murdering, pillaging, destroying villages. I mean, en masse. That's how they came back to their neighborhoods. You know, they took back their fortifications. They were around to fight constantly with the Native American tribes. And they really did not want to fight with these things. They wanted to be left alone. You know, a definite live and let live kind of truce is what they wanted. And they just wouldn't leave the Native Americans alone. So apparently what happened is when I tell the story about the dogmen, that's what they were created to do. They were created to wipe these things out because there was no way to get rid of them. Okay? There just wasn't. These white giants, okay, were able to take over the North American continent again away from the Native Americans. And that's pretty horrific when you realize that all the bloodbath that was shed there over this. Okay? These guys just came pretty much and went as they pleased. And they would wipe out a food system and then they would leave. Like I said, they were notorious for enslaving tribes. You know, they went out, they grabbed them, scouted for them, stole them, you know, and made them their personal slaves. They used them for mining. You know, people have found mines all over the North American continent where they are very primitive type mining, pit mining. And they've found and shown that it's all roughly around the same time, and that the things that were used, the tools that were used, were just enormous, you know, and there are still remnants of them to be seen in the museums, you know, back east. And it's really, if you have the chance to look at these adze is their that's a type of hammer that they use, where they use a stone. They are too big for a human to hold and mine. You know, they can't use the hatchets. They can't use the types of tools, hammers, etc. that they were using because they weigh 25, 35 pounds. A normal human being couldn't hold that and mine. You know, they had to be used for other things in the mining process. So these giants were here. They were mining. They were taking away gold and copper and silver, you know. And I'm saying that because it's not just copper. I want to say that because that's a prevailing notion, and it's not true. You know, it's not one that they have really pushed to the forefront, and people need to think about that. You know, there again, there's history that's being hidden from you and changed, which we all know I freak out about when I have to go to the school and teach. I'm like, no, that's not it. You know, they're changing history. Well, they are, because these races, this lost race of these giants, was just a little more advanced than the Native American tribes. So they enslaved them, they used them for whatever they would use them for, you know, and when they were done with them, they would kill them and eat them, you know. So all of the Native American tribes on the North American continent were nervous around them, you know. It kind of scared them, you know. And there again, people want to throw in there too, when they talk about the giants, that the legends, some of the legends say that they went back to heaven. That's a whole different subject. They're talking about them being from apparently outer space. I don't believe that. I do believe that maybe, I'm not saying it's possible, I'm just saying maybe, there's another way to look at it. And they had the ability to have flying machines and to do the things that they needed to do. That subject I will discuss on my blog, because I don't want to subject people to my thoughts during these lessons like that, because I can grow pretty crazy on the theoretical, so I want to kind of keep it straight here for this. Like I said, these guys were huge. They ate humans, enslaved humans, used the humans pretty much for their beasts of burden, broke them down and used them. And what we find evidence of is that they were sleeping and living in these mining quarters that they made for themselves and for their slaves, which goes to show that they were here. I'm sorry, I had to yawn. That they were here, and that they were definitely involved in the mining process of copper, gold, silver, and I want to say uranium, because we do have mines, ancient mines here on the North American continent that show that they were made specifically for uranium. So that's kind of a different way to look at things, but it's the truth, and I want that to be forefront, is the fact that these things that I'm telling you are the truth, and anybody can check that out. You just go online and go look up facts, I don't know, type in keywords, uranium, ancient mining. Once you start realizing that the Native American myths, so-called myths and legends, had truth to them, then you have to start questioning everything about the world that we live in. And that's what this one is about today. Because if you can imagine and question and bring yourself to understand that we had giants that walked among us here on the North American continent, then what makes that so different than taking the next step and understanding that we have conscious cryptids that are also walking this North American continent with us? And that instance, I need people to kind of grasp onto and understand that these things, these beings, are here. Just like the Nahullo were here. They are here because this planet allows them to be here. It is a teaching planet. So these types of beings are members of their own society. And we have clashed with their society. And now all that is left is our society. We destroyed theirs. But there are still remnants of it here for us to find. And I think that gives us a chance and an opportunity to find truth. So the second part of this is going to be relating some of the other tribes that are here on the North American continent, their legends about these beings, and there are a few. So it can't be one tribe's imagination if there are other tribes who have remembrances and spoken stories of these Nahullo beings, And I want to throw in here that our science fathers do not take into fact the spoken legends of the American Indians here on the North American continent, but yet they will take into consideration the Indian continent of their indigenous peoples, the Hindu, the Jains, they take into all of that, the Brahmas, all of that, because it's called the Mahabharata, and the Mahabharata is a spoken word, and it goes back 1,000 years, telling their histories and their stories, and it's accepted as a form of ancient history. But yet here in America they do not accept our spoken history, even though it is remembered pretty damn concisely. You know, it matches up with the time frames and everything that we give, match up with what the so-called experts have their own time frame, and it matches it. So I want everyone to understand that when I'm putting this stuff out there, I'm just not flying by the seat of my pants here. Anyhow, I'll let everyone take a break, and then we will have the second part of this lesson on giants, or the Nahullo. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to having you listen to the second episode. Bye.